Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Your Cloud Databases session, the truth about your data security posture. My name is Mor Manor, Head of Innovations, Operations at Imperva, and I'm here to share with you some insight about the importance of cloud data security posture, as well as presenting with you one of our latest innovations called Imperva Snapshot, a patent-pending technology that can provide robust insight about the cloud data security posture of your databases. What we have on today's agenda is a little bit about the current state of cloud and data security. Then we'll jump into Snapshot technology and the importance of cloud data security posture. Then we'll move into a more technical part of the presentation, switching gears, and we'll talk about the patent-pending technology itself. What are the components that Imperva Snapshot tool runs in the cloud environment? And we will wrap up the session with some real-life example, the latest findings by cloud operators and users just like you who run Imperva Snapshot tool in their environment, and what are the insights and visibility, the type of visibility that they gain after running the tool in their environment. Talking about cloud and specifically about the importance of data, I would like to focus on those two numbers that I believe can reflect the current state of cloud misconfiguration and data security. If you're looking at 2020, over 31 billion data records have been compromised, while the majority of which were due to cloud data breach. This is a very high numbers that emphasize to us the magnitude of and the importance to protect our data, specifically the type of data that resides on cloud environment. And if we're looking at the other number, 99%, this number from Gartner's prediction that indicates that by 2025, 99% of misconfiguration that probably could lead to some sort of data breach would be due to customer fault. So meaning the majority of those misconfiguration can be addressable had we have the correct visibility and understanding of our cloud security posture. To put us all on the same line, understanding what are the devastating results of cloud data breach and breach in general, I do want to share with you a few examples from recent years of examples that hit the news and are indicates for small misconfiguration leads to devastating results due to the data breaches in those cases. And the first is from a marketing firm that back in June 2019 had over 340 million personal records leaked due to a simple cloud misconfiguration. The database itself was configured to be publicly accessible, and then the bad actors put their hands on the databases, and that leads to a very high volume of records that have been exploited and exposed. Another example is from a financial firm back in July 2020 that 7 million exposed usernames and passwords have been exposed due to, again, could be a minor misconfiguration. The database was unencrypted and the S3 bucket was publicly accessible. Had a security operator had known about those issues, I guess it would put the necessary security rules to address those. But that lack of visibility could lead to those scenarios, data breaches with devastating results. And with those stories in mind, and understanding that visibility is a key into our cloud environment, specifically understanding the type of data that we have resides on our databases, we've thought about what are the key insights and visibility cloud operators need to have on their daily basis to understand the security posture of their cloud environment. And those are the key pillars we're thinking are necessary for every cloud operator. We would like to know what is the security posture of the cloud environment and the selected databases. If we have any vulnerabilities, are there any software updates required? And if there are any misconfiguration on the specific databases and the environment. It's also really important to understand what is the type of data that we have resides on the databases. Do we have sensitive data on that? Who have access to the database regarding permissions? Do we set remote access? And what are the group policies applicable on the selected database? And lastly, in terms of compliance, it's really important to know what is the compliance level, as well as if we have any PII or PCI information on a specific database. With that in mind, we thought about an innovative tool that can provide visibility into those three main pillars: misconfiguration and bad practices, known vulnerabilities, and specifically to provide visibility into data, the cloud data security posture, indicating what is the privacy and compliance and data classification of a database in your environment. For that, we came up with Imperva Snapshot, a patent pending technology. It's important to know that at the moment, the patent pending technology and the tool itself is dedicated for AWS environment and RDS databases only. And what we have in this environment is the fact that we don't need to any credentials of the database, the selected database that the user want to scan. The tool itself accesses a snapshot of a selected database only. We manage to reset the master password of the snapshot and open it on an isolated VPC. That means the tool is production safe, doesn't have impact on your production environment, and all the data is also resides within the specific tenant and account of the user. We also don't need any credential. The ability to reset the master password and to open the database, the snapshot database, on an isolated environment allows us to gain a lot of visibility into the database itself, and the data resides on the database. When a user runs Imperva Snapshot, by the end of a scan, he receives a PDF directly into your inbox. And I do want to share with you the main highlights of such a report. First and foremost, the user received a cloud data security posture, high-level executive summary, when one can learn and understand the security posture of the selected database. It will know what is the risk level, if there are any misconfiguration of the databases, what are the main vulnerabilities of the database, as well as the sensitive data found on the selected database. The user can also see what are the top insights and main acts for mitigation in order to have a solid security posture on the selected database. As we go through the report, we'll have a deep dive section for each one of the categories. For misconfiguration and bad practices, the user can see what are the security risks, what are the assessment tests that have been run, and what are the outcomes of each one of those. And obviously, all of these are being listed based on the severity level. In terms of known vulnerabilities, the user can see what are the type of vulnerabilities that have been found that the database is exposed to. Being labeled by years, the later the year, obviously, it requires a patch. Probably that CV is being exploited somewhere in the wild. But the user really can understand what is the current status of the database and what is the security level of the selected database that has been scanned. And lastly, in terms of cloud data security posture, Imperva Snapshot provides visibility into data resides on the database, making the labeling of the sensitive data record that have been found, what are the categories of each, what are the total items, and on which column, and what overall number of columns are including sensitive data. The user can also see the compliance level for the selected databases, understanding what is the compliance degree for the selected scan. Understanding what the tool is doing is great. You get an interesting insight and a quick posture of the selected databases, as well as visibility into the data. But I do want to take you through the journey of how the magic happens and what happened behind the scene when you're running Imperva Snapshot. It's important to know that the entire process is fully automated. As mentioned previously, currently the tool supports AWS environment and RDS and Aurora databases. And I do want to take you through the phases of what is being triggered and what tool that we use when running Imperva Snapshot. So really starting that automated process with basic prerequisite. Obviously, we need to make sure that the selected database is RDS or Aurora, and we need to make sure that the specific RDS has an available snapshot. Without a snapshot, the scan cannot be completed. This specific snapshot is then being deployed in an isolated VPC, and for that, we're also checking that there is an available VPC to deploy that snapshot into. Once those prerequisites are done and being checked, I do want to take you through the journey of provisioning in Flow and what are the basic templates that we use on the cloud formation. And it's important to know that in this point, All templates are publicly available. So Imperva Snapshot tool is free and production safe, and we have full transparency to our user to understand what is being run in their environment while running Imperva Snapshot. So the root templates actually start by collecting all the key parameters and is the base template to the other templates that are being used, the setup template and the installer template. The setup template starts with verifying the prerequisite from the slide before and making sure that the selected database and the DB identifier are on the same region, then moving forward into the installer template where all lambdas are being set to run Imperva Snapshot tool itself and to start assess the database and run all the relevant tests. So what lambdas are being created and what are the functions of lambda in this process? The first and foremost is the sandboxer lambda that acts as the DevSec expert in the environment, we can say. It creates all the networking resources. It creates the next lambdas. It restores the selected databases into the isolated VPCs, and it deletes all created resources by the end of the process. So we make sure that everything is running on an isolated environment that will have no impact on your live production environment. And by the end of the process, the isolated VPC, as well as other lambdas and templates, are automatically deleting themselves, that they will have no impact on your environment. The next lambda is the scanner. And the key function of the scanner is first to reset the master password of the restored RDS. This is one of the main parts of the patent pending of Imperva Snapshot, the fact that you don't need to insert database credentials at any time. The scanner lambda delete its master password, and then once you deploy it on the isolated VPC, we have full access to the database on the isolated environment to run all queries and assessment tests. It ran the scan as well as classification, and it sends all the data into the last lambda, the reporter, that collects all the results from the scanners and also generate a PDF report that is being sent to the user. So by the end of that process, a user who runs Imperva Snapshot in their environment receive that Imperva Snapshot PDF report to gain visibility into the cloud data security posture of the selected database. Understanding what the components are great, but I do want to take with you a step-by-step through the flow and what is the process and what's happening through an Imperva Snapshot scan. And if we start with the installer stack who creates the sandbox lambda, then it creates the isolated VPC where we can deploy the selected snapshot. Obviously, it's based on the fact that it all match the prerequisite and the selected database has an available snapshot to be deployed. Once the snapshot is being deployed into and being restored into that isolated VPC, we create the security groups from the sandboxer lambda in order to make sure that there is no internet gateway and all assets have capabilities and YAM rules only to do relevant activities and functionalities to Imperva Snapshot. So the entire environment is isolated, and each one of the resources and the YAM rule created during the process have access and permissions to do activities only on the isolated environment and on the isolated components. Then their scanner lambda start entire assessment and report all insight into the reporter, who then send that final report to the users with the Imperva Snapshot final report. I mentioned through the process a few times the importance of a production safe tool, obviously for cloud operator to run a new tool in their environment. That might be tricky at times, but we do have full transparency of what Imperva Snapshot is doing, and we do want to make sure that this is a really production safe tool. So as mentioned before, we have a full transparency of Imperva Snapshot and its code, and it's available on our GitHub project. But specifically regarding the precautions that we have taken developing the tool, we made sure that the snapshot is being restored on an isolated VPC. New security groups in the routing table are being created, and no internet gateway is in place. So nothing can come in and out from that isolated VPC. So also important to know that only resources that were created during that process, the new security groups have access into. So it cannot have access into other resources, previously resources that have been created in the environment. Another important note as part of the patent pending technology of Imperative Snapshot is the fact that we are not need an admin permissions to run the tool. A security admin or cloud-sec operators who want to know the security posture of the selected database can simply run the tool. No need to admin permissions and no need for credential for the selected databases. This is a real game changer that can make your life easier understanding the current security posture of a selected database. For the final part of the presentation, I do want to share with you some example based on recent scanning and finding from Imperative Snapshot scans by cloud operators just like you who run Imperative Snapshot in their environment, and share with you some common insights that have been identified against all those users who came up to us seeking more information about Imperative Snapshot and how to mitigate the security gaps in their environment. So the first example referred to a marketing organization that had a few misconfigurations in their environment. Imperative Snapshot has identified that there were a few misconfigurations about excessive permissions. The database itself was not encrypted, and a snapshot of the database was publicly available. Think about to yourself for a second. So a bad act has access to a publicly available snapshot, and the database itself is not even encrypted. Easy win for the bad guys. Specifically, that database was also with over 200 known vulnerabilities. So this is a really bad shape in terms of security posture for the selected database. Now, if we make the correlation in order to understand what it would be the ideal game plan and what we need to mitigate, then we have the added value of cloud data security posture. And Imperative Snapshot indeed indicate what is the type of data and sensitive data that have been found on the selected database. So over 1.2 million email addresses have been stored and reside on the database. Over 500K of personal identifiers and over 100,000 mobile phones numbers have been identified in that scan. So within those misconfiguration and with that type of sensitive data resides on the database, that could really have been and become another one of those base scenarios of a massive data leakage. Another scenario from a financial firm also points out a common misconfiguration that we seen in an example before. Database that was not encrypted, a snapshot was publicly available. We also have seen that the specific database had the subscription disabled for security group updates. So you don't get alerts of any security groups. For that database specifically, we have found, as Imperative Snapshot has identified, 500 passwords, 100 credit cards, and almost 2,000 mobile numbers. Again, a high amount of sensitive data within those misconfigurations in place can be easily leaked into the bad guys. And the last example that I want to bring you is from a cloud service company that also, as you can see, there is some sort of a repeating motive, the type of misconfiguration. A misconfiguration that lead into excessive permissions, a database that was not encrypted, and a publicly available snapshot. The specific database was also have been vulnerable to almost 100 known vulnerability. And look about the overall sensitive data that have been stored there. 20,000 addresses, 20,000 email addresses, and close to 5K of personal data. Makes the correlation between the security status of the database, the misconfiguration that you have, and the sensitive data being reside on the databases, a cloud operator can come with a game plan and decide what database is the top priority to be addressed and protect and address the security gaps that have been found. And this is the key thing by Imperva Snapshot, making that correlation, providing that visibility between misconfiguration, understanding the security posture of the databases, and what is the type of data that is being reside on the databases. And based on that, you can come up with a game plan to address the security gaps and with priority and visibility to the content and data that you want to protect. So in terms of key takeaways in the common misconfiguration and what we have seen in the wild from users in cloud operator, again, just like you who run cloud environment, we saw that there are some misconfiguration that repeat themselves, and users need to be careful and pay attention to address those ahead of time, so they will not be part of the statistics, going back to that Gartner quote in the beginning of the presentation. Making sure you don't have any misconfiguration when it comes into excessive permissions. Publicly available snapshot. It's really easy to fall into this one, but even if you have a lab environment and you want to share the snapshot between two different locations and you want to have access between two different locations, make sure that if you make a snapshot publicly available for a certain amount of time, change it into a private mode right away. Otherwise, it's being available out there. And if your data is not encrypted, the data that on the specific snapshot or on the database is not encrypted, that's really an easy gain and an easy win for the bad acts. And finally, in terms of subscription for security groups, make sure it's being enabled to be triggered regarding any security alerts that are related to your databases. I really hope you find Imperva Snapshot interesting. And if you want to learn more and to taste some of that transparency and to see the code of Imperva Snapshot, I first welcome you to look into our GitHub project, where you can see also our CLI project in our GitHub, where Imperva Snapshot can be activated through a CLI, where you can schedule tasks, automated the process, and get an immediate security posture of a new database that has been created. And I also recommend you to try Imperva Snapshot yourself. If you go into our landing page, try.imperva.com/snapshot, and see it yourself, get some more information if you want to run it on your environment, and get some insight to make sure your cloud database is fully secure. If you want to reach out, feel free. Mor Manor, hit me up, free the email or on LinkedIn. I'm really happy to share those insights with you and hopefully talk with you soon. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.